Yeah, Bharat, is everybody there? All the panelists are there?
Hi, sir. Good afternoon. We are waiting for the participants to join. In another 5 minutes, we'll be starting.
Okay.
Mr. Gupta, this is Dev Jyoti from CII. We are waiting for chairman. So,
Yes, sir. Chairman, sir, will be joining in just 2-3 minutes. We're just
Okay.
setting it up.
Okay. And Mono is there?
Yes.
What
Yeah,
about
hi,
Ms.
Mono.
Bharajay from Deloitte?
Is
Yeah.
Good afternoon.
Okay,
Miss
great.
Barrows from Deloitte is there.
Yes.
Sanil and Preeti from Mercer are there.
Yeah, good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. This is Preeti.
Okay.
Monica, hi, good afternoon. Bharat this side. If everybody has joined, we can start the session now.
I think we are still waiting for Mr. Supratim, Chairman, PFRDA.
Okay.
Yeah, Milinji.
Namaskar, sir.
Namaskar.
Namaskar. So, Bharat, can we start now?
Yeah. On behalf of CII, I welcome everybody to the webinar on National Pension System, NPS for Corporates, with the theme Securing Retirement with NPS and Insights for Employer. Today we have with us Mr. Suprapati Bandopadhyay, Chairman PFRDA, Mr. CP Gupta, Chairman CII Uttar Pradesh State Council, Ms. Preeti Chandrasekhar, India Business Leader, Health and Wealth Fellow Actuary Mercer, Mr. Sanil from Mercer, Mr. Mono Fukan, General Manager PFRDA, Ms. Behroz Kamdin, Partner Deloitte Haskins and Sells PP LLP. So Mr. CP Gupta is presently the chairman of CII Uttar Pradesh, the most populous state of the country. He is also chairman and MD of Ambika Steel Limited, a family-owned company which manufactures industrial stainless steel. The company also manufactures and exports special grades of stainless steel to more than 50 countries in the world. Mr. Gupta is a commerce graduate and as well as he holds bachelor's degree in law from Delhi University. He is member and trustee of various religious, spiritual and educational organizations in Delhi. Mr. Suprapati Bandopadhyay is chairman PFRDA since 21st of February 2020. Prior to that, he was the whole-time director finance of PFRDA for 2 years. Mr. Bandopadhyay has vast experience in the field of insurance and served around 3.5 decades at LIC, the largest life insurance company of the country. He has also held the position of MD and CEO of LIC Pension Fund. Mr. Bandopadhyay's areas of expertise include finance and investment and has served on the board of Central Bank of India. He was also on the board of FIMDA for 6 years. Mr. Bandopadhyay is science graduate and a qualified CA. He loves reading books and listening to light classical music. Ms. Preeti Chandrasekhar is India Business Leader, Health and Wealth and Fellow Actuary at Mercer. She is a Fellow of Institute of Actuaries India with 29 plus years of experience, particularly in management consulting, in the insurance, retirement lines and other employee benefits. Ms. Chandrasekhar has extensive experience in design and delivery of benefits, including employee communication for better employee engagement in voluntary benefit programs. She has also authored several international and national papers. Mr. Mono Fukan is GM with PFRDA and his current assignments are promotion and development of NPS, product design, training, media and public relations, financial literacy, board of secretariat, information help desk and pension advisory committee. Prior to joining PFRDA, Mr. Fukan worked with IDBI Bank as DGM and with Corporation Bank as product manager and has banking experience of more than 12 years. Mr. Fukan holds honors degree in commerce, MBA and CAIB. Ms. Behroz Kamdin, partner Deloitte Haskins and Sells LLP. She has over 25 years of experience in corporate and international tax to companies with focus on financial services and technology sector. She has advised Indian financial institutions on Indian tax laws and rules implementing the US tax law, Foreign Account Tax Compliance Act and OECD Common Reporting Standards. She represents clients at tax authorities and appellate authority and the authority of advanced ruling. She is a regular presenter and writer on tax topics relevant to financial and services sector. With this, I hand over the to proceedings to Mr. CP Gupta, Chairman CII Uttar Pradesh, for to kindly welcome do his welcome remarks and moderate the session. Over to you, Mr. Gupta. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
A very good afternoon to all of you. Mr. Supratim Bandopadhyay, Chairman PFRDA, Ms. Behroz Kamdin, Partner Deloitte Haskins and Sells LLP, Ms. Preeti Chandrasekhar, Indian Business Leader, Health and Fellow Actuary Mercer, Mr. Mono Fukan, General Manager, PFRDA. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my privilege to welcome you all at the webinar on National Pension System for Corporates. We are really honored to have with us Mr. Supratim Bandyopadhyay, Chairman, PFRDA. Thank you, Mr. Bandyopadhyay, for sparing time and joining with CII membership from Uttar Pradesh. Ladies and gentlemen, to have a smooth and financial safe retirement, people invest in various instruments starting from mutual fund, stocks, real estate to NPS, EPF, etc. These are some of the most common retirement instruments. Having said that, National Pension Scheme is considered one of the best investment tools for retirement planning in India. While all investment instruments have their own merits and demerits, NPS investments is largely focused on the retirement of investors. The main purpose of NPS is for the investors to get a pension during their retirement years, along with tax benefits every financial year. NPS is totally a voluntary contribution scheme, and one can open an NPS account on one John. This pension scheme offers investors to choose from three options of investment: equity, corporate debt, and government bonds. Hence, with NPS, investors have their high exposure to equities, which can fetch high returns also. On the other hand, with the National Pension Scheme, subscriber enjoy full tax exemption up to the limit of rupees 1.5 lakh under Section 80C. Subscribers also get tax exemption of up to rupees 50,000 under Section 80 CCD 1B. Investors can also claim deduction under Section 80 CCD subsection 2 of up to 10% of his or her basic salary plus dearness allowances on the employer's contribution made towards employee's NPS account. So choosing an investment tool for retirement can be confusing. However, not investing in the right instrument could mean losing out on the potential returns of the investor. Hence, it is better to understand these instruments properly to make an informed decision. Even though NPS is considered an ideal option for retirement, its low popularity is due to the lower commission on the sale of the product. However, when compared to the other assets of the retirement categories, NPS almost stands out with some lucrative features. And as we all know, the corporate people always look for some kind of good pension scheme. So we will like to listen from the mouth of Chairman PFRDA, Mr. Supratim Bandyopadhyay. Please, over to you, Mr. Bandyopadhyay. Welcome to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Gupta. Thank you for giving a nice introduction. And I believe certain things you have told about NPS, it seems that you know about NPS a great deal, and that's quite important for us, that the way NPS is actually reaching out to people and engaging their attention over the years. We are really thankful to institutions like market, institutions like CII, FICCI, and all that. And since last year, we are in touch with the CII. We had many such successful occasions and webinars through which we could reach out to people. So I thank my co-panelists also, our senior actually from Marcel, Preeti Chandrasekhar, and her colleague Sanil Nair. We have a very senior chartered accountant from Deloitte, Madam Behrouz Kamdin, who will be talking about tax. Preeti and Sanil obviously will be talking about their experience with the Indian corporate sector so far as retirement benefit planning is concerned. Basically, I think they will be talking about the employer's expectation, employee's expectation, and where we are currently. And my colleague Mono Fukon, General Manager, is also there. He will be talking about the NPS, the product per se. So as far as practicable, I'll be touching about the retirement benefit scenario as it is obtaining in India today and what we see where NPS is at the current moment and how far market NPS can create. and what really benefits that it offers, it puts on the table so that people can really take advantage of that. So whenever we talk about a retirement benefit market, then maybe we have to talk about the demographic scene in that particular country. Why talk about retirement? Because basically the younger generation, they don't want to talk about retirement at all. Yesterday, I was reading a very, very interesting article there. One sentence was there that now actually younger generation, the millennials, they are avoiding owning assets. They don't think about cars, houses, even furnitures are taken on rent. And so obviously they have an abhorrence for NPS also, because that is also a kind of a financial asset. And obviously they think that thing which is coming in next 30, 35 years, why you think about it now? But the reason lies in the fact that if you look into the demography of India, today what is happening is that whether we know or not know, maybe we have seen in papers, the way India population is growing and the way Chinese population is decreasing. I don't know, interesting news had come out that now Chinese government has allowed 3-child policy. They are allowing it. They have recently done it because the way the population is shrinking there, they are really afraid. So the way Indian population is growing at this rate and the way Chinese population is shrinking, by 2027 we'll overtake China. This is, I believe, another 6 years. A lot of us will be there to see whether whatever is projected comes true or not. But definitely, even if we don't cross that population, our number is going to become higher. And not only the population is growing, at the same time, population is aging also. Today, when we started the vaccination for coronavirus with people above 60 years of age, there also we saw the kind of crowd we never expected, because here in India, more than 10-11% of the population are in that age group. By 2050, we are expecting almost 1% out of every 5 in Indian population will be above 60. The question is, who will support them? Now, all of us know earlier the system of joint family, that has totally gone away. It is broken now. So obviously people have to stand on their own feet, and absolutely there is no other way but to think about retirement benefit planning. Like any other planning that we do, similarly we have to do a retirement benefit planning. Another issue that is adding some complication to the entire process is the longevity. So people earlier used to sometimes will wish that you live long, but today in some cases it becomes not a boon but a bane. What we are seeing that at the age of 60 in India, people are living for on an average 18 more years. At the time of birth, the expected number of years a person will live is more than 68 years, almost 68 and a half years. So these things we have not seen earlier, but with the advancement of medical facilities, these things are happening today. So these are facts. We cannot deny these facts, or we cannot overlook these facts. So that's why we have to start early and build up a corpus. In whatever way, NPS may be one of the tools, one of the better products available in the market, but there are many other things that one can look into. Indian market, as you have rightly said, Mr. Gupta, is a very, very fragmented market. And obviously, when we talk about retirement benefits, the biggest thing that comes to our mind is EPFO. It started working long back. The act is of 1952 vintage. And currently, I believe more than 13 crore, the total corpus, total assets managed by them is about 13 lakh crore. Insurance portfolio also has a pension component, which is superannuation fund, as we call them. There are also some assets are already there. NPS, APY, all taken together as of now, as we stand today, it is little over 6 lakh crore. So all together, if we calculate, add up, and there are special provident funds, coal miners provident fund and all that. If we add up, it is just about 14% total pension assets to India's GDP, just about 14%. If we talk about some of the advanced countries like Switzerland, Australia, UK, US, Canada, their pension assets is far, far above their country's GDP. Just for an example, in Switzerland, it is 141% of their GDP. So we have a lot of catching up to do. And so the basic thing that we have to think about is the financial awareness and awareness about retirement benefit planning that we have to do. If you look at the purpose of NPS, why it was created, purpose of NPS was basically to cover the central government employees. Earlier central government employees, as you know, there was an old pension scheme and it changed over to this national pension system as we know today, with effect from 2004, 1st of January. Until that time, currently, almost all state governments, excepting two, and a lot of autonomous bodies, both from state and central government, they have joined us. And currently, we have about 73 lakh state and central government employees. So they were the main plank on which NPS was created. But slowly government allowed it to retail subscribers, to corporates for their employees, like that. Today, as we are talking, we have about 8,500 corporates registered with us, those who have gone for NPS, and other retail customers are there. But out of these 8,500 corporates, the total number of employees covered, if we look at it, it is not even 12 lakh. So that way, as we say, the take-up rate means the corporate started in the right earnest, but thereafter somehow the drive stopped, and maybe only 2, 3, 4% of the entire employee population only is covered. Beyond that, it has not gone. If we look at the retail sector, little over 17 lakh people are covered. So taken together, this non-government sector constitutes only of about 29 lakh people. But that also actually was very, very small 3-4 years back. Last 3-4 years, people are taking note of NPS, and slowly it is also increasing. NPS, apart from superannuation fund, is the only product which ensures a regular income post-retirement. There are other retirement benefit plannings, like as I said, there is EPFO and there is other pension schemes. But in most of these provident fund kind of schemes, what they do is that they give entire corpus in lump sum. By giving that in lump sum, we always don't ensure that there will be a regular income. If I am getting the money, it is entirely my choice as to what I do with the lump sum. I can buy a house. I can go for my daughter's marriage. I can send a son or a daughter for higher studies abroad. Or there may be other family commitments where the entire part of the money will go, or a large part of the money will go. So there is no concept of giving a regular income. Yes, EPFO has one component called EPS, Employee Pension Scheme, which was launched way back, I believe, in 1995. But there a regular income comes. But there also, the amount is so small. I believe we calculated And maybe at maximum level, a person can get 7,500 rupees a month, not beyond that. And the minimum amount that is guaranteed there is only 1,000 rupees a month, not more than that. But here is a choice, which is NPS, which is pretty flexible, where you can create a corpus of your own according to your choice, according to your need. Because need of every person will differ. And it is not that the need of a person remains constant during the entire working life. It changes over the years. Yes, something takes priority over the other things as we go along in our life. And accordingly, the needs also change, my requirement also will change, and accordingly, the size of the corpus has to vary. Here, there is absolute flexibility. It is not any other product like an insurance product. When you purchase the insurance product, your premium is fixed and you continue to pay the premium whether there is some difficulty, financial difficulty or not, or if you need some kind of a breather. No, you have to pay. Here, you can absolutely choose your amount of contribution every year according to your wish. You contribute as many times during the year as you wish. So a lot of flexibility, a lot of enablements are given in the system to ensure that you create the right kind of corpus which you believe will stand you in good state when you are going to retire and live a life of dignity. Yes, Mr. Gupta, you have rightly pointed out that it being a low-cost product, it cuts both ways. That the revenue to the distributors also is pretty low. And to a great extent, we depend on institutional distributors like banks, NBFCs, and all that. But recently, we have decided to go into individual distributors also, like you have agents in insurance, or maybe you have seen distributors in mutual funds. Yes, maybe we have to look into the revenue structure, but at the same time, we would wish to keep it a low-cost product, because if the cost is low, ultimately the entire net of cost benefit passes on to the customer. And that is for what we are here to ensure that you get a product which gives you the best kind of return in the market in the similar segment. Our returns are great. When Mr. Fukan shows the presentation, you will see the kind of returns that we have given over the years. And we have now a track record of almost more than 12 years. So it's not a small track record. So one can depend on it and accordingly one can come into it. And once you join, it's not that you are bound by the same asset allocation pattern. If you wish to decrease your contribution in equity, anytime you can do it. Twice a year, in fact, you can do it free of cost. It does not require any cost or any other issues are there. Today, we have about 4 crore 30 lakh customers. Out of that, as I said, 29 lakh is about non-government customers. Around 73, 74 lakh is government customers. Beyond that, we have a segment which is for mostly social security purpose. There are two products. One is already withdrawn, that is NPS Lite or Savlaman, as it was known. It was withdrawn in 2015, but still some customers are there, over 40 lakhs. And a large part, the balance part, comes from the current social security scheme, which is guaranteed by Government of India. There, the pension is guaranteed. There are 5 slabs of pension from 1,000 to 5,000, and one can choose according to their wish. The same amount of guaranteed pension will be paid. Yes, time to time, they have to give a contribution. And in this case, the contributions are fixed. It can be a monthly interval, quarterly interval, or half-yearly interval, as you wish. So it constitutes about close to 3 crore other customers, and that's a large base. So not only we are trying to go to the niche segment, people who have money, who can invest, who can create a corpus, we are going to middle class, lower middle class, and we are going to unorganized sector also to give them protection of pension when they need it most. So this is the, in a nutshell, what we are doing and what we have been trying over all these years. Only thing is that we need the corporates also to be part of us in increasing this financial awareness amongst their own employees. Because I believe corporates also have a big role to play in hand-holding and guiding their younger people, those who are joining. Because when an employer says something, normally it is accepted. And there also we have joined hands with many employers whenever they said that we want to have an awareness camp. Please come and join us. We joined. Maybe nowadays going physically will not be possible. We can have an online session like this, the particular employer and the employees, and whatever their questions are that we can answer. But I believe the kind of engagement that we are having with CII, I really thank you because for giving us this platform through which we can reach out to your members and through them to a larger section of the population. So thank you, and I thank all the co-panelists, and I give it over to Mr. Gupta to take it forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. And you have rightly said, and what I raised the question about, because the commission is very less. So awareness about this NPS scheme is very less known in the corporates. And as a CII, we can always be there to help you in circulating it to the industry. We are always there for this. Thank you very much for taking so much time. Now I invite Ms. Preeti Chandrasekhar, India Business Leader, Health and Wealth, and Fellow Actuary, Mercer, to share her views. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, Mr. Gupta, and good afternoon to all of you. Thanks to PFRDA and CII for giving us this opportunity for Mercer to speak about a subject which is very close to our heart. I hope all of you are safe and well in your respective places, and I hope everything is okay with you. When we talk about this subject, and if we move on to the next slide, there were a lot of startling facts that the chairman of PFRDA talked about, and which is really, really true, definitely. And we are seeing that actually they say that by 2050, we would actually have 10% of the global seniors will be in India. So that is not a very comfortable position to be in, especially from the context of how ready we are for that kind of a scenario. We will touch upon three key dimensions over here. One is, so if I just sum it up, it will be what is it that we're talking about? So what, if we are living longer, and really what next can be done about it? First one is we will live longer, can we afford it? And if we move on to the next slide, we will see that, all countries perhaps are in the same storm, I would say, but different boats, definitely, because we all are going to live longer. It's a fact. And we all know that the pension systems in all countries are under stress. Some countries perhaps are more stressed, some countries are less stressed, depending upon the demographic profile of the country. And we are almost all countries are moving from a defined benefit kind of a scenario to a defined contribution scenario, which means that it is no more the old pension systems where it used to be index linked and given to the employees on retirement. It will now be pretty much something where either there is a fixed contribution by the company like Provident Fund, or something that we would have to fend for ourselves, and depending upon how the growth of the fund happens, it will determine how much money we have at when we retire. What is the kind of challenge that we are facing in these kind of a scenario? The risk obviously is transferred from the employer to the employee. When I talk of employer-employee relationship, And there are certain complex decisions that the employee needs to take. How much do I save? That's a big question. And in this day and age of consumerism, that gets very challenging indeed. And how do I invest my money? What do I buy? How to monitor the entire portfolio? What do I do when I retire? What is the kind of product I buy to ensure, where do I invest this money that I have saved to ensure a regular income? And really the kind of financial illiteracy that we are talking about really confounds the problem significantly. But having said that, one thing is very clear that all countries are facing this. India perhaps is in a slightly different position because we don't have a social security network. We are pretty much left to fend for ourselves. And generally speaking, you just have about 6% of the population under any kind of a private pension arrangement, which seems very scary indeed. If we move on to the next slide. This is another study that we have done at Mercer along with the CFA Institute, which is an annual exercise called the Global Pension Index, where we have actually ranked about 38 countries overall. And we see that India is actually the 34th in the ranking. So the idea of the pension, the entire index is not about saying how do we move to the top 3, because as I said earlier, we don't have a social security system. So clearly that's not something that we can look at for ourselves as a country. And for us to be realistic, I think what is important for us is to make sure that all of us save sufficiently so that we make sure that there is enough money in the kitty for us to have an adequate pension system, and make sure it is sustainable, which means that I as an individual don't save it and then withdraw a lump sum for something else. So that is where there is an erosion of my retirement corpus, and hence it reduces the sustainability to that extent. So this is what I wanted to present from a global standpoint. Now let us look at ourselves. If we move on to the next slide, please. Yeah, this is another slide when we're talking about can we afford longevity. Clearly, if we see that the retirement savings gap is significant for us especially in China and India. And why is this happening? I gave you a data point about the rapidly aging population in India. We have a large unorganized sector, which is about over 90% of the total workforce. And there is no pension system for them, except for, for them trying to sort of save it for themselves. And there is not adequate literacy amongst them to understand the importance of saving. Hopefully the new labor codes, which are introducing some kind of social security network for the gig and platform workers and the unorganized sector, should improve this kind of an index for us. We also have a growing middle class. What is happening? That we have improved the quality of life, but because of that, money is never enough. And Chairman sir also talked about the younger generation wanting to actually not own but to experience. So what happens with that is I experience implies that I don't own anything. Many of the assets, maybe people feel that they don't even need to buy a house, they can just rent out a house. But eventually what happens, it erodes the entire system to the extent that when I actually think that I will need something, I may not have sufficient money to be able to even have that experience. So even to get an experience on a sustained basis, I need to plan. So very clearly, we need to make sure that we are actually planning properly, we are actually saving enough. So if we move on to the next slide. Now, this is something that I would like to talk about on what happens while we are in service. what's happening is we have a certain income that we get on a regular basis. I would have my household expenses like my rent, mortgage, EMI, depending upon whether I own a asset or I'm actually enjoying the asset, as I talked about earlier. I have some other regular payments. I have food expenses. Then I have transport, travel expenses. I have health and medical expenses. So I have a whole lot of expenses that are actually working. These are all outflows for a cash inflow in the form of a salary. Now, what happens when I retire? If you move on to the next slide, please. So what's happening when I'm retiring? My regular income from or my salary is actually disappeared, but I still have these competing expenses for myself. Some of them may increase, some of them may decrease. You may have an EMI for your mortgage, or some of the other regular payments having reduced. Your transport expenses may reduce because the regular office commute may reduce. Entertainment expense may increase depending upon what kind of a lifestyle I had before my retirement as compared to post-retirement. Personal expenses for children may reduce because you would expect typically that the children would have settled in their own lives, but the health and medical expenses would significantly increase as compared to what it was before for two reasons. One is I'm older, and obviously with age catching up, as I said, we all will live longer, but will we live healthy is a moot point. So because of that, the expenses will go up. And the second thing, which is very, very important for all of us in the private sector, is I don't have a company-sponsored medical program which takes care of my medical expenses. So any hospitalization, any kind of a surgery, I would have to dip into my savings to some extent. So with all these forces trying to act simultaneously on my retirement kitty, how much do I actually manage to save to be able to take care of my day-to-day expenses? That is a moot point. And if you move on to the next slide. So this is the next question, we would say how much is of income is adequate after a person retires. And it depends upon a whole lot of things. It depends upon one's lifestyle, but typically anything between 60 to 80% of regular income is something that we can say would be comfortable for people to sustain post-retirement. Why do we say that it's not 100%? As we talked in the one before, there are quite a few expenses which actually go down, but there are other expenses which catch up. So on an average, you would think just until 80% would be good enough. Now, I may think if you look at the Indian context, we have Provident Fund, you have gratuity, you have some schemes which are sponsored by the employer-sponsored schemes, which are mandatory. How much would they actually give me? It is quite, I would say, scary to see that they actually cover only 25 to 30% of the last drawn salary, provided I have actually, as an employee, and my employer also ensures that the PF contribution is on the full basis. I have not moved jobs and hence taken gratuity lump sum and actually enjoyed it before I moved on. Assuming that we actually have a regular, so people have stayed on in the same jobs, or people have not withdrawn their Provident Fund, they have moved the money, Provident Fund is on full basic, etc. With that, it's only about 25 to 30%. And if we have only a corporate NPS contribution of 10%, we can just about make it to 40%. We still have a huge gap. And that actually gets very scary because you see, psychologically also different people have a different kind of a comfort on financial wellness. Some people feel, I don't have a stress, I sleep well, not thinking about money is perhaps my idea of being financially, for financial well-being. Some of us think that, okay, I don't have any debt, loan, etc. That means that I'm stress-free and hence I'm financially okay. Some of us feel that I have the financial freedom, which means that even if I lose a job, or if I go part-time, or if I want to sort of go for further studies, that financial freedom indicates that I am financially well off, which means I have very low financial fragility for myself. Some people say just meeting day-to-day expenses is enough for me. I mean, I don't need to sort of bother about it. Yet, many people, and if you look at this kind of a level, maturity from a financial wellness standpoint, maturity really means that you've actually been able to understand retirement planning and be able to do something about it. So that is the kind of maturity we're talking about when it is as far as financial wellness is concerned. We move on to the next slide. Now the next one is, okay, so we all understand that, this is what it is. So what? As Chairman Sir rightly said, that we are at a workplace for most of our active life, most of our active and healthy life. We are at a workplace for a big part of our day. So our workplace actually has a very, very big influence on, on the way we behave towards certain things. So these are a few slides from a survey that Mercer did for organizations, where we actually surveyed both the employer and the employee. And this is an employee perspective, because many companies say that, we give people cash and cash is king, and hence it's okay if they can take care of themselves. But what we have seen is that, and this is from India, employees actually prefer to work for an organization that is known for 4 top things. And out of the 4 top ones, 43% of the employees think that physiological, and financial well-being is extremely important for them when the organization is known to take care of that aspect. That's one dimension. Second one, towards the left, you see, we all, this is last year when this COVID, struck us for the first time. We saw what is important to employees. We all know that we had all expected that there would be some wage stagnation. If you see all the percentages out here, all of them actually point towards financial wellness in some sense. We have flexibility in terms of savings and investment vehicles. How do you do a midlife checkup for health, wealth, and career, financial wellness, education, financial wellness, advice, long-term financial planning, enhanced retirement contribution, flexible contract, and reduced hours at retirement age. And this is really a very powerful slide for us, because we clearly see that everywhere in each of these dimensions, you are having retirement, financial planning featuring from an employee standpoint. And yet, if we see what our company is doing, there are 4 data points here. I will just talk about one data point. We have only 29% of organizations providing some kind of financial education to employees. So there is clearly a lot organizations can do for their employees. And for us to say cash is king and we let them decide for themselves is perhaps not the right thing. We should surely facilitate financial planning. We should surely nudge them in the right direction. Can we move on to the next slide? Yeah. Now, this is also another interesting slide on, what makes employees join an organization, stay in an organization, and leave the organization. If you see the ones which are in bold, that is financial well-being initiatives and pension retirement options, actually feature in the top 15. And while joining, it may not be the higher on priority, but for them to stay and actually for them to leave to join some other organization, financial well-being initiatives and pension retirement options actually form, they sort of increase in the ranking. This was 2020. Now, with the second wave, we know we have all been exposed to a high level of, financial fragility. We have seen a lot of, problems that employees had because of the breadwinning, the earning member actually having succumbed to COVID. We know people do not, and I honestly, we have heard very, very scary stories from organizations, from clients, from friends and family. So it just makes you wonder that perhaps what we were doing was really not enough. And organizations have actually started focusing more on the welfare of the individual, much more than what we had seen in 2019 and even 2020 for that matter. You can move on to the next slide, please. Okay, so this slide talks about, we think that people just want to retire and superannuate, and perhaps the image in our minds is somebody sitting in a rocking chair with a tea or coffee and a newspaper in one's hand. But that is clearly not so from a corporate perspective, because we've seen companies saying that 81% of the employees in India intend to work past retirement. And it is not because they need money, it is because they think that there's more steam and energy in them to be able to continue contributing. 96% are also open to contingent working. Yet, what we are seeing is organizations are actually don't have enough to be able to support this kind of flexibility of employment for individuals. So clearly, there is a lot organizations can do, and we at Mercer have been talking and supporting a lot of organizations on NPS implementations. And you will see when Sanil, takes you through the rest of the slides on what are some on the ground realities, on the ground challenges that we are seeing companies face. Over to you, Sanil. Sanil, you're on mute.
Yeah, before Sunil.
Sorry, sir. Yeah, thank you, Priti. Am I audible?
I just all want delegates to put their questions in the chat box so that they can be taken with the panelists. Please, I request to put your questions in chat box. Thank you very much. Yeah, Sunil.
Thank you, sir. Yeah, thank you, Priti. So greetings to everyone. So as rightly put by Priti, some of the slides which I will cover will talk about more about our experience when we implement the corporate NPS model. So what are the thoughts of the corporates, their employees? We'll try to cover up some of the aspects there. So coming on this particular slide, we would like to share some thoughts of our corporate clients and their employees on retirement benefits and planning. This slide will give you an employer-employee perspective. What is shown is different generation of employees working together, but at the same time, each with their own mindset for saving and retirement planning. For example, a millionaire or younger lot, most of the time for them, they earn well, right? They would rather enjoy the present, spend spend a lot on items of their choice. However, saving for future takes a back seat most of the time, and perceived value of retirement saving is quite low. This was also highlighted by Chairman Sir a while ago. Just opposite, for a middle-aged and older person, retirement saving or a sustainable standard of living post-retirement becomes one of the priority. From an employer perspective, we have seen what they look for is minimum administrative burden and fiduciary responsibility when they look forward to implement or even evaluate any retirement program within their company. They would always like to play conservative without any risk on investment for their employees. Employers also believe higher and better the employee engagement is, and higher is the success for any such plan. They are also conscious of the fact that each age group have different priorities and their attitude to save for future differs accordingly. Hence, taking everyone together on this journey does become a challenge at times. On right side of the slide, if you see, what we have indicated are some of the employees' priorities when they choose or pick any saving retirement plan, what they most of the time look for is flexibility, simplicity, simple plans, higher returns, and overall holistic approach to financial wellness, and not just restricting to one product or kind of or an investment solution. Next slide, please. So what will work well? How can employer help? What challenges they face? Let's talk about that. Today, from an Indian pension perspective, organizations offer two kind of popular pension schemes, superannuation and NPS. Some offer either one of them or both. However, now more and more companies are moving towards NPS because of its appealing features and returns and many other facilities which the plan brings in. Though we have seen NPS is steadily becoming popular in corporate model, the take-up rate still remains a challenge, and we all agree to that. Reason being, it's a voluntary pension program. As we all know, so engaging employees could be challenging. Topics related to financial wellness does not always excite all age groups, as we spoke in early slide as well. We have also seen just an education session on retirement planning for employees does not prove to be very effective always. So what makes a difference? Based on our own experience as consultants, we feel effective communication and personalized approach have a positive effect and result in higher engagement. As also mentioned by Chairman Sir on how NPS got far more flexible features with low cost, higher returns as compared to other instruments available in the market. We all agree today NPS is a product with some appealing features. A lot of effort is going on to make it more and more attractive. However, it needs to be communicated well for two employees for higher take-up rate results. Next slide, please. So let's talk a little bit more about the challenges for both stakeholders. Here we are referring to the employer and employee. To start with the employer, for most of the multinational companies, global buy-in is imperative because before they launch any such plan locally. We have seen global leadership would like to be convinced first before local teams takes over. This process is time consuming because not most of the time, not always the global people would really understand the Indian market and how the pension system works. So to that extent, the decision itself gets deferred for a later stage. Most of the companies today are have a tie-up with a third-party payroll provider, which is again comes as a challenge sometimes. As you know, many companies use third-party for payroll activities. Their system needs to be ready to include NPS as one of the component. Any delay at their end would also delay the entire launch. Employee engagement and internal operational support are very important in the tick in the box to decide for any such implementation. If we talk about the challenges with employees, people are at different levels of well-being and their responses to company initiatives are different. Someone would still be attracted to iPhones, may buy expensive watches. Retirement saving could still take a back seat. So priorities are different. Another common issue which we face, employees are unsure when to start saving, how much to save, what is the ideal time to save. They sometimes do have the intent to save, but when they're really undecided, and rather decision to invest gets deferred every time, in fact, year by year. So is it fair to say lack of financial literacy is a big challenge today? We have observed yes. We also feel right balance between employee expenses and savings is another issue employees face, and this imbalance would further result in no or inadequate retirement planning. Next slide, please. This is the final slide, but an important slide. What would ensure success of NPS program in an organization? So we all know take-up rate is the proof of the pudding. So what will make that happen? Effective and personalized communication does make a difference to ensure success percentage goes up, to increase success percentage. If employees relate themselves to the concept of retirement planning, they will opt in for the program. Just talking about the features, may not work. The entire concept of retirement planning should be emphasized upon when we talk to the employees. Right partner for successful implementation is equally important. So if in case we know there are different intermediaries in an NPS program, and POP, the first intermediary, plays a very important role. So an efficient POP would ensure smooth and timely account opening and grievance handling. A satisfied employee would always speak high about the program to more and more employees. So we have seen the opposite also when a very not successful POP implementation happened. There all the take-up rate was also a challenge. Then to ensure successful NPS program, a company should all ensure regular engagement with their employees and not to treat the entire implementation as one-time assignment. A regular hammering, if I have to say, it's an ongoing process. Employees needs to be reminded at frequent interval that you need to invest for retirement. So it's important to understand the intention action gap. As we mentioned earlier, if you recall, there is an intent, but when to take that action, they're unsure of. Can we use an opt-out option instead of opt-in? Will that work? We can always try. Finally, company leadership should lead by example. They should be convinced, enrolled in the program, and further convince employees on the relevance of retirement planning. This brings to end to our session. Thanks for your patient hearing.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Sunil, and thank you very much, Ms. Preeti Chandrasekhar. And I again say to all the attendees and the delegates to put their question in the chat box, which we will take later on after the panelists' talks are over. So now I invite Mr. Mono Fukon, General Manager, PFRDA. Over to you, Mr. Mono Fukon.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. I just share my slides.
Yeah, please.
I hope my slides are visible, sir.
Yeah.
Yeah,
no problem.
So basically, I'll speak about the features, benefits of the NPS, and I have a small presentation for this. First and foremost, I'll just go into the features of NPS. Basically, when we talk about features of NPS, we talk about a pension account which is unique, which is transferable across employment and geography. You say unique because each individual has a unique number or a pension account, and that remains constant throughout the employment, and a single person can open 2 accounts. So it is a number which has been allotted at the beginning of the opening of the account, which remains throughout the working life. Even if we change his employment, so only the tagging of the employer will go on changing. The account number will remain the same. So that is the uniqueness of its being portable across employment and geographies. The next is that the scheme NPS, the costs have been discovered or has been fixed, or the limits has been fixed by the regulator in such a manner that it gives the benefit to the subscribers of the low cost. It's not the low cost or the least cost product that is available in India. It is globally, it has been ranked one of the lowest cost pension product. Flexible choices, a lot of choices have been offered to the customers or to the subscribers of NPS. They have choices of fund managers, which I'll talk about later. They have choices of allocating their contributions to different asset classes. Attractive returns, the returns on investments are comparable, and it's comparable with the most similar products that are available, and it all has been offering over a period of 12 years more or less higher than the comparable investment products that are available. At tax efficiency, it talks about there are various tax incentives and benefits of contributing to NPS, the accumulations, and how the maturity proceeds are also not being taxed. So tax part, our co-speaker, Madam Byros, will be talking in detail, or speaking in detail, and detailing the entire benefits that are on the tax part. Transparency, when we talk about transparency, we say that all the transactions are very much transparent in the system and very much visible from the way that has been moved from the contributions to the investment phase, and it can be accessed online 24/7. And over and above all, this entire scheme is being regulated by PFRDA. It means that all the entities are regulated, they have been registered, and the investment guidelines are also being given by us for the fund manager to invest, how the contributions of the subscribers will be handled. So talking about a pension account, when I said we have nomenclature of two types, basically, the tier 1 and the tier 2. It's in the normal parallels or the system parallels we call. But tier 1 is basically the pension account, which is mandatory. And it has all the tax benefits, and the minimum amount that is required is 500 to open the account, and the minimum contributions per year is 1,000. There is no limit on the number of contributions or an amount of contributions that can be made to the pension account. So a subscriber is free to contribute any amount, any number of times during the entire tenure or during the entire year. But when we talk about the tier 2, it's an optional. When we have a pension account, then only the question of opening a tier 2 account comes into. But there are restrictions on there are no restrictions on withdrawal on this account. So what is that? The benefits of the pension account is also available in the tier 2 account, which is an optional account, and the minimum amount required to open the account is 5,000 rupees, and the minimum contribution is 250. Here also there is no limit on the number of contributions or the amount of contributions there, and there is no restrictions on the number of or the amount that can be withdrawn. The only difference between these two are that the pension account has all the tax benefits, and there are no tax benefits on the tier 2 account. The gains on tier 2 account are taxable at a marginal rate. So we have phased out the process of NPS basically into 3 phases: entry, accumulation, and exit. So entry, by the word entry, we mean that how to join the scheme. So we have only one condition of joining the scheme, that it should be a citizen of India, age between 18 to 70 years. By citizen of India, we mean that he can be a resident, non-resident, and an overseas citizen of India. And the requirement that we require for the KYC compliance, we require a photograph and an address proof. And the account can be opened by filling up a physical form through the points of presence, the distribution channel that we have, or it can be opened online also through Aadhaar, PAN, and a bank account. The next phase after opening the account is about accumulation of contributions, how the contributions are being made. We have kept flexibility on the manner in which the person can contribute, a subscriber can contribute. A subscriber can't contribute alone. He can tie up with an employer also. When he ties up with an employer, the employer can also pay, or the employee can also pay. It's either of them, or they can both contribute equally or in different proportions also. So the flexibility is there between the employee and the employee to contribute as per their will, either by the employer, either by the employee, or both of them contribute in equal or in unequal proportions. So once the contributions comes in, the banking partner or the trustee bank helps us to transfer the money to the pension funds. So the pension funds invest those contributions that they receive according to the investment guidance that has been provided by the regulator. And at the end of the day, they declare the net asset value of the scheme on a daily basis. So with the net asset funds being declared, what the record keeper does is that the contributions are unitized. The contributions are converted in the form of units and are credited in the pension account. So what typically a pension account will have credits is the units. And as and when the subscriber contributes, the contributions is again converted into units, and the total units that have been reflected in the pension account multiplied by the net asset value, which is declared by the pension funds daily. That's the value of the corpus or the pension fund or the pension corpus that the subscriber has. And as and when the person contributes, the corpus goes on increasing. In the next phase, we talk about maturity on exit, how to close the account. Basically, we say that when the normal age of closing the account or the maturity is at 60 years of the superannuation age. Superannuation age may be lower than 60 or maybe higher than 60 also. So what happens in a normal exit, what we say that is that 40% of the accumulated corpus has to be mandatorily utilized for purchasing an annuity plan for an insurance from an insurance company or an annuity service provider that we tell, and 60% of the corpus can be taken as a lump sum. If the corpus is less or up to 5 lakhs or equal to 5 lakhs, the entire corpus is being paid in cash or in lump sum to the subscriber. We have a terminology, or what we call is that if the subscriber wants to withdraw prior to attaining the age of 60 or before the superannuation age, we call it as a premature exit. What happens is that we allow premature exit only after 10 years of joining the scheme, or before 60 years of age or the superannuation age. And in that case, we say that minimum 80% of the corpus has to be utilized for purchasing an annuity to derive the pension. So, and only 20% will be paid as a lump sum. If the corpus is less or equal to 2.5 lakhs, the entire amount is paid in cash as a lump sum to the subscriber. And in case of unfortunate death of the subscriber, the amount of corpus that is outstanding in the pension account is being paid, can be paid to the nominee. The nominee also has a choice either to take the entire amount in cash or to purchase an annuity from an annuity service provider empaneled with us. The annuity service provider, as we have told, we have a 14 empaneled insurance company empaneled with us. They offer different types of annuity products, and this choice has to be made by the subscriber at the point of exit. And it varies, the annuity rates varies between 5.5 to 6% as on date. So the subscriber can make his choices of the annuity plan from any of the 14 annuity service provider that is empaneled with us. When I talk about choices, the subscriber has choices, a lot of choices. The first choice starts with the record keeper. We have 2 record keepers right now operational, and we have the 3rd record keeper also, CAMS, which has been granted license and will be operational shortly. And apart from this, we have the choice of the fund managers, the pension funds. We have 7 of them. And the choice of the pension fund or the record keeper can be changed once in a year. So in case of the record keeper, there is a slight differential in the costing. Apart from that, the service level standards has been fixed by the regulator. So the service delivery standards are same, that has been mandated by as a regulator. And for the government pension funds, government subscribers, we have 3 fund managers who are default: SBI, LIC, and UTI Retirement Solutions. So they have been the offer mandated as a default choice for the government subscriber. For the non-government subscribers, they can choose any one of the pension funds, and this choice can be changed once in a year. After this pension fund has been selected, the next choice comes with how the contributions will be allocated between the different asset classes that we have mandated for the fund managers to offer. So we have 4 asset classes, that is equity, corporate bonds, government securities, and alternate assets. We have caps or limits of equity up to 75%, and in alternate assets only 5%. So the entire contributions of the subscriber can either flow to all these 4 types of assets with the caps on equity and alternate assets, or otherwise you can say that, okay, 100% of my contributions can go to corporate bonds or to government securities. If a subscriber chooses equity, the maximum contribution that can go is 75% of the entire contribution. So 25% has to be splitted up either between the 3 or maybe chosen as one. And this choice also can be changed twice in a year. If a subscriber doesn't want to do an active choice between these 4 asset classes, he has another choice that we call as an auto choice. So what happens is that between these 3 asset classes, equity, corporate bonds, and government securities, the contributions have been broken up, can be divided in the proportion of its risk appetite. We have 3 life cycle funds, that is LC75, which we call as an aggressive fund, and moderate life cycle, and the conservative life cycle fund. The only difference between the 3 life cycle funds is that the equity exposure in the LC75 or an aggressive fund is 75% equity, 50% equity in a moderate life cycle fund, and the LC25 has a conservative view wherein the 25% equity exposure is there for the subscriber. So what happens is that after the age of 35, this proportion between these 3 asset classes goes on changing. In the aggressive fund, the equity goes on reducing by 4%. The Moderate one goes on reducing by 2% and 1% in case of a conservative life cycle fund. What happens at the age of 50? The auto rebalancing happens on each birthday of the subscriber, that is 36 years onwards. Until the age of 50, the aggressive life cycle fund, the equity exposure goes down to 25%, in a moderate 15%, and in the conservative one 5%. So this 20%, 15%, and 5% goes on from 50 years till the superannuation is to the age of 60. So it happens that an auto rebalancing happens on each birthday after the age of 35. As I've talked about returns that NPS has been able to give attractive returns as compared to the other investment products that are available. We have an experience of around more than 13 years in the central government's scheme, wherein equity exposure is around 15%. So in the last 13 years, 10% returns has been delivered by all the three fund managers taken as an average. And equity funds has given the highest, around 12.63 over the last 11 years. Corporate bonds around 10.02 and government securities also 9.58. As on 19th of June, this is the status of the number of subscribers and the corpus that we have. The total corpus is more than 16,000 crores almost, and have a subscriber base of 4 crores 32 lakhs. NPS, Lite, and APY, which are government sponsored schemes, wherein the number of subscribers are on the higher side. But in the government, we have more than central government, we have around 22 lakh subscribers, and the state government, we have around 52.5 lakh subscribers. And in the corporate and the non-government individuals who have joined voluntary, we have around 29 lakhs plus subscribers. And considering the AUM also, the highest sector that has been contributing the AUM is say state governments, 3,10,000. Central government is almost 1,92,000. And the non-government segment, we have around 92,000 corpus and 20,000 corpus in the government sponsor scheme of APY and NPS Lite. Transparency and accessibility, as I told you, we have enabled viewing the account through the web login. The user ID is the PAN, the pension account number, and the password also can be generated online through the mobile number with an OTP base. So all the transactions can be done on the mobile app or in the web login by the subscriber himself. Contributions, change of address, or his change of nominee, bank account. He can contribute, put partial withdrawals requests, and make exit requests also into this. Lastly, I'll just highlight on the grievance redressal mechanism that has been set up or has been emphasized on by the regulator. We have a special subscriber grievance regulations for this, and we have kept in different timelines for each of the intermediaries to comply with. If there is any grievance by a subscriber, has any grievance against the system, the subscriber can lodge his grievances online or through physical mode. And the intermediary against which the grievances is there, he has to resolve it within a period of 30 days. And if it's not resolved, we have an escalation matrix to the trust. And then if the subscriber is not satisfied with the resolution being provided, it goes to the ombudsman. And even after that, ombudsman, we have the escalation matrix to the regulator, and beyond the regulator, we have the Securities Appellate Tribunal. But as on date, we have not seen any of those cases moving to the SAT. So this is what I like to have to present on the features and benefits of NPS. Thank you, and over to Mr. Sri Gupta.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mano Phukon, for a very detailed presentation on NPS scheme. It was quite elaborative. And in the between, my one question to you, like as you said, that corporates can also put money into the employee's account. And whether the same money will be taxable in the employee's account in the same year, whatsoever is put in their account?
Madam Behrouz will be talking, speaking that in detail. Yes,
So,
employers contribution. Yes. What happens is that there are limits being fixed.
We need more clarity on it because
Yeah, Madam Behrouz will be talking about that.
How employer and employee can be together contributory to it. Like we are just doing PF only at present. That is the major concept, but every employer and employee is using. NPS is very less known to me. I'm sorry to say this, but we will ask Ms. Behrouz Kamdin if she will be guiding on this. She knows tax laws. That would be better. I invite Ms. Behrouz. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Gupta.
Thank you, Ms. Behrouz.
Thank you, Mono. And thank you, Mr. Bandyopadhyay, for giving us this opportunity. We have a small presentation. Mono, if you can share that presentation. So before we start with the presentation, basically, I think every speaker has said about the importance of retirement planning, and it's very important. So I can just share. I have two boys, and they were both saying that I'm in a private organization as a partner, and we don't have a pension scheme. So they were mentioning that my sister who works in a bank, when she retires, she will have a pension. My husband who was in the army, he's got pension. So they are saying, Mama, have you made arrangements for your own pension? I said, I've got two boys. I hope they will take care of me. And they started laughing. They said, Mama, start making pension contributions. So I think today the world has been changing. And of course, I think they will look after me. They really take care of me. But I think every person needs to know that they need to save for their retirement. And it's very clear. And what you save may not be relevant. So that's what I think Preeti was saying, that the amount of corpus that you require is much more for getting a proper pension that you need at retirement. So every type of investment has to be looked into, and not only one type of investment. So whether it's PPF or PF, like they mentioned, we generally have PF, we have PPF, and we think that's sufficient. We have gratuity and we think it's sufficient, and it's not sufficient. So when we look at retirement, we have to look at all types of securities, all types of modes that is available, and also look at NPS, which has little tax advantages, as was mentioned. So when we come to tax incentives of NPS, and also, of course, there are 2-3 benefits of NPS, and I just would like to touch on that. One very clear benefit that I myself have experienced in my own jobs, which I've done across the years, is that if I'm a part of a superannuation fund, that fund is linked to the employer. When I quit the employment, that fund doesn't go along with me. It stays with the employer, and if I have not completed number of years that is required for me to get superannuation, I don't get any benefit out of it. So I worked for 8 years and I quit. And the minimum number of years that you required was 10 years. So if I didn't complete 10 years, I don't get pension, though I had contributed for 8 years. So it's a complete loss for me. So as compared to that, if you look at NPS, you can take NPS along with you wherever you go. It is linked to the employee. And that's the most important benefit which is there for NPS. And that is something which I think has to be seen as compared to other retirement funds. The second best advantage that we could see, and what Mono has been speaking about, is on the returns that have been given. And it's not only that you can decide where you want to invest, because otherwise it's the employer or the fund which is deciding where you need to invest and get the returns. Here you can see the fund managers, how they are performing, and then invest. And you also have a government security scheme, where if you don't know, normal people don't know fund management, and therefore we go to experts. So where we don't know fund management and we can't track our investments on a daily basis, we can easily put in government security, which is so secure and still giving a 9.58% return. I think that's very important to see. None of my fixed deposit doesn't give me so much, which is also now very risky, which you're now realizing that even fixed deposits are risky. Fixed deposit gives you 6%, 7%, 5.5%. As compared to that, I have an NPS, which is giving me 9.58% for government securities. So these are some things that we need to look at. And of course, we have tax benefits, which we'll discuss shortly. So when we cover today, and I know we're running out of time, so I'll try to do it quickly. Tax incentives of investing in NPS and for changes which have come about because of the Finance Act 2020 and 2021. So when we look at tax incentives, we look at 4 quadrants of it. One is when the employer makes a contribution. So when an employer makes a contribution, Mr. Gupta asked, what happens to that? Will it be taxable for the employees? Will the employer get a deduction? Then when the employee makes a contribution, will he be allowed a deduction? So one, I'm making a contribution for investment purposes. But because our government over the years have been giving certain tax incentives for savings, will I get a benefit for that? So I look at that also. Then what I have to look at is the annual accretion. On annual accretion, year-on-year accretion, what happens to that? Is it taxable, not taxable? And then on withdrawal. So there are 4 phases in my investment cycle that I look at. And we will look at all of these 4 when we're looking at NPS. So if you go to next slide. I know this is a very cluttered slide, but we have tried to capture it just in one slide to say what are the tax benefits of investing in NPS. If as an individual, I were to invest in NPS, then I get a deduction of up to 20% of my total income under Section 80 CCD. So I can invest up to 20%, and this investment, what we're talking about, is in Tier 1. Tier 1 is the account which is there for tax benefits. So if I invest in Tier 1, and that is actually my pension account. The Tier 2 account is more like a mutual fund. So Tier 1 account, if I invest in up to 20% of gross income, I get a benefit. If I'm an employee, up to 10% of my total salary plus durance allowance, I get a benefit under 80 CCD. Now this benefit is actually part of my aggregate benefits, which are clubbed along with my PF, which I do, PPF that I do, insurance that I do. So it's part of my 1,50,000 limit. It's not additional to 1,50,000 limit. However, for NPS, they've given an exclusivity to say additionally 50,000. If you invest, you get benefits under 80 CCD1. So actually, NPS, I can invest additionally 50,000 and straight get a tax benefit. Even if I've exhausted my entire limits on PF, PPF, insurance, I've exhausted the entire limit of 1,50,000. I still get 50,000 as a benefit for NPS. So that is my straight benefit which I get. And that's I think it's a crust. I mean, I save immediately 33%. So अगर आप देखोगे तो 50,000 का around 17,000 tax saving हो गया है. 35,000 is my investment, but I actually invest 50. So whenever I count my return, I am counting return on 50. When actually I've already got the tax benefit upfront in the year 1 itself. So आपको अगर return आप net पे देखोगे तो it's much higher. But that's something which is core. And I think if you look at it, and we've seen statistics being showed, a lot of investments have come from the financial capital of India. So Mumbai से बहुत सारे लोगों ने investment किया हुआ NPS में. So I think they're looking at the tax benefits very clearly. These tax benefits are available if you're under normal tax rates. So now what the government has done is they've got 2 separate tax rates. One is a normal tax rates where you can claim deductions and have a tax applicable. And one is a lower tax rates where you don't get any benefits, but you get a lower rate of tax. And what we've seen is generally for people who are working, unless you're in a very low income category, you would still go for a normal tax rates. You would not go for a lower tax rates. Lower tax rates उनके लिए होता है जिसके पास they don't have the facility or the economic power to invest. Who are in a low income groups, then they would go into a lower tax rates. Otherwise, we generally seen based on calculations done that on a higher tax bracket is always good to go for deductions because you can invest also. Now, employer's contribution to the fund, employer gets a deduction for the contribution that they make. Employer's contribution is fully taxable as salary for the employees. Plus, what they have done in the Finance Act of 2020, they have said that it will also be taken as part of my aggregate 7,50,000 limit for employer's contribution. So first thing, it gets taxed, but you get a deduction for it under 80 CCD2. So 80 CCD2, they have said that entire employer's contribution, though its salary, will be completely tax-free, tax deductible without any monetary limit. So 100 अगर tax हो गया है, तो 100 deduction भी मिल जाता है. There's no tax liability coming on it. But the 100 which has been contributed by the employer will get added to the aggregate limit of 7,50,000. And we'll discuss that a little later. Annual accretion to NPS, it's not taxable unless it relates to the amount which aggregates more than 7,50,000 rupees for employer's contribution only. Employee's contribution or my own contribution as an individual, which I do, annual accretion is not taxable. So if you look at it, annual accretion for employee's contribution, individual contribution is not taxable. Annual accretion for employer's contribution, if it's within the limit of 7,50,000, it is not taxable. If it exceeds that limit, then it is taxable. Withdrawal from the fund, and this is the most important tax benefit which the government has given. And you compare this with your other investment cycles, mutual funds, shares. When you withdraw, it becomes taxable. You have capital gains coming. Here is this where annual accretion to NPS, 40% is mandatory to be taken into an annuity, and that is not taxable. So you have to take an annuity policy because the whole purpose is to get pension. And 60% what you can withdraw is also not taxable. So 100% on your withdrawal on maturity is not taxable. Now, only problem is it's been held for so many years. So if you start early in life, you could be holding your fund account for 30 years. If you start mid-age, then it depends. Withdrawal from the fund, partial withdrawal, if you look at it, 25% of the total amount which is contributed by the employee is exempt. So whatever employee's contribution is there, 25% of that, if you withdraw, is not taxable. But here again, the catch is it speaks of employee. So if an individual like me who's not an employee, and if an individual, any individual, say self-employed persons, if they were to contribute and withdraw, then the entire withdrawal could be taxable. This does not seem to be the intent, because the intent is very clear to say it should be 25% of your own contribution should be allowed as withdrawal. But the way the section is worded, it becomes taxable. Contribution tier 2 account. So central government, if you look at it, there's an additional benefit up to 14%. So employers' contribution up to 10% in case of normal employees is allowed as a deduction. And in case of central government employees, up to 14% of the salary is allowed as a deduction. Central government employees have got additional benefits also, that if you contribute tier 2 account and you hold for 3 years, it will be considered as part of ATC. So along with your PF, PPF, insurance, even this will be taken into account, but it will still come within the limit of 1,50,000. So it cannot exceed 1,50,000. The limit stands as it is. So next slide. We'll now discuss what the change was made in the Finance Act 2020. So earlier to Finance Act 2020, what used to happen is that employers' contribution to PF used to not be taxable at all. Subject to it was within the 12% of the salary. Employers' contribution NPS was not taxable. It was taxable, but I got a 100% deduction. So it was not, in that sense, not taxable. Employers' contribution to superannuation fund was taxable only if it exceeded 1,50,000 rupees. So there was an additional deduction of 1,50,000 which was allowed. Now what they've done is they've clubbed all the three together, and they said that if it exceeds 7,50,000, then it becomes taxable. So employers' contribution to recognized provident fund, NPS, and superannuation fund all put together, if it exceeds 7,50,000, it is taxable. And they've also said annual accretion, interest, dividend, or any other amount of similar nature, whatever accretes to this excess amount, then that also is taxable. And they've come out with the rules for it. So if you go to next slide, they've actually given the rules for the next, in the rule 3B, which is a standard rule. You can go through it, which says that what is my taxable perquisite for the year? It is depending on your contribution, which is excess of 7,50,000, divide by 2 because it averages the year. I keep contributing on a monthly basis. To take an average, it says excess contribution divide by 2 into the rate. Rate is what has to be defined, as to be worked out. Similarly, whatever I've done in the earlier years, whatever excess contributions happened in the earlier years, plus the taxable perquisite of the earlier years into that rate. It's a very simple formula if you look at it, and very comprehensively worked out, so that they cover every aspect of it. It's very comprehensively worked out. But there are a few queries which come up on this. The next 2 slides is only an example, but it's just an example of how the working has to be done. And I think it's very easy to see how calculations are being done. But I think the main issue which comes up is that what happens to an interest. So generally what will happen is in NPS or PF, if you look at it, NPS at least may come in. PF, if you look at it, the interest for the year is paid next year. It's not paid as of 31st. It is paid as of 31st, but it's paid subsequently. So for March 2021, do I consider that as my accrual or not, annual accretion or not? That becomes a question, because annual accretion only on the excess has to be considered and not the entire thing. That's the whole query which comes up. Previous year, they've said current previous year, prior year. So again, there's a issue which has to be looked into. You don't have to look at the earlier years, the things. And supposing if there is a fall in the value and there's a loss which has happened, can I set off that loss against my other accruals? Those are some questions which keep coming up. But as we work through, I think the formula is very well explained. And I'm open to any questions now. Over to you, Mr. Gupta.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Behroz Kamdin. I think you got less time, and subject were more demanding, I think. So, so if I invite all the participants, whosoever some questions, we can take 2-3 questions because we are already out of time. So, and please ask your question, and to the panelist whom you want to ask, please tell this. Yeah, Devjyoti, are you taking up the question?
So we have received few questions from the participants. The first question is from Mr. Yatin. This question is directed to Chairman Sir. His question is, why there are so many intermediary charges involved in investment in NPS? This defeats low expense ratio advantage to subscriber.
Yes, intermediaries are quite a few in number. To that extent, you are correct. Because we have POPs, we have Central Record Keeping Agency, we have Trustee Bank, a lot many intermediaries are there. But the only thing is that for each of these intermediaries, if you look at the revenue stream, it is kept at such a low level. You must have heard when Mr. Fukano was telling, possibly this is the lowest cost pension structure in the world. So pension fund managers also have some charge. Yes, because if somebody is giving some service, you have to give them some charge. Just one point I want to put up for your consideration, that today, when you go to a mutual fund, suppose you are in an equity scheme, what could be the charge? It can be anything between 1.5% to say to 2.25%, depending on the kind of equity fund that you are in and the particular fund house which is running that fund. Against that, suppose you have a equity heavy kind of a NPS where you have put 75% in equity, which in mutual fund parlance will be taken as a equity fund. There, how much we are charging? The maximum charge that can be taken by a fund manager is just 9 basis points. The comparison is, if there for each 100 rupee for mutual fund, the lowest charge is 1 rupee 50 paise. Here the fund manager is allowed 9 paise for every 100 rupee. Just make the comparison and please tell that whether still that looks too much. And this 9 paise also is after a recent increase. In fact, till 31st March, they were allowed only 1 paise. So, because certain things, when I am taking help of certain intermediaries, we have to ensure that their business model also remains viable, and at the same time, at the cost of the customers, they don't make a huge unaccountable profit. That is also not the intention. But I can tell you that our efforts here is that we keep it within a certain limit. For POPs, those who are the distribution channel, how much we are giving? 0.2% of the total amount of collection. Go to an insurance agent or any insurance scheme. If that insurance scheme is running for more than 15 years, the standard first year commission is 25%. Just compare with other distributors, even mutual fund distributors, although SEBI has brought down it drastically, still it is much, much higher than the NPS cost structure. So in India, you will not find any comparison.
Okay.
World over also, we will not find any comparison.
We have another question from Mr. Harjot Singh. Basically, he wants to understand about the investment. Can tier 1 and tier 2 accounts be simultaneously opened? If yes, how much money should be invested in this account or in one account?
See, first a tier 1 is the compulsory account. So first you have to have a tier 1, get your permanent retirement account number, which is known as PRAN, and immediately thereafter you can activize your tier 2 account. So first you get your tier 1 account, have a PRAN number, which is your unique identifier, and thereafter you open your Tier 2 account. So far as the amount that is to be invested, the minimum contribution for Tier 1, as this slide says, per year is 1,000 rupees, whereas the minimum contribution for opening Tier 2 is also 1,000 rupees, and thereafter it can be 250 rupees also. So with a very small amount also you can open, but at the same time we can say that so far as the limit is concerned, there is no limit. Only limit is your income capacity. Obviously, it has to be substantiated by your known sources of income. Beyond that, there is no limit that it has to be within 1 lakh, 1.5 lakh, or 5 lakh a year. Nothing like that.
So the next question is from Mr. Sumit Sharma. Although this has been explained by Chairman Sir and the other panelists, but still he wants to understand, does it make sense for him to invest in NPS if he has already invested in PF, PPF, stock market, mutual funds?
I believe Behroz Madam, while showing her presentation, she told that any one mode may not be sufficient. I also broadly agree to that, and I say that different things are for different purposes. And as I said earlier also, PF, PPF may not essentially ultimately at the point of retirement will ensure a regularity of income. Here in NPS, what we do, at least 40% of the corpus is annuitized, and annuity is a scheme which takes the longevity risk and gives a fixed amount of return over the entire lifetime of the subscriber. So which ideally any pension scheme should do. So I believe NPS has to be there in your kitty. Along with that, you enjoy the benefits of PF, PPF and other things, definitely.
So, sir, I would also like to add one more thing to what Chairman has said, is that the importance of diversification is one, because you don't want to put all your eggs in one basket, right? So that diversification aspect is extremely important. Like while you have invested in PF, PPF, as sir said, they are lump sum, primarily not focused on retirement per se. Stock market, mutual funds, again discussed about charges, about the volatility, etc., plus the aspect of diversification. And in current state of affairs, the tax breaks also. I will say current because tax breaks is not something that we can use to be able to invest, because they will change over the course of my employment. So these are some of the additional things I thought I would add here. Thank you.
And one more small point, if time permits, I would like to add on this thing also, because the investment management for PF, PPF is on a different footing, and the entire investment management in NPS is on a different footing. NPS asset management is more dynamic. It gives you the actual market value of the asset, and whereas PF, PPF normally will track the long-term interest rate scenario. You must have seen, if you are a PPF investor, how the PPF rates have come down, and almost every quarter now they reassess all the small saving schemes along with PPF also, the interest rates, and in the long term it is bound to come down. I believe currently it is just about 7.1%, and at one point we have seen even closer to 9%. So that is what. Whereas you have seen the track record of NPS. Yes, again, let me add the disclaimer that whatever track record we have shown, it may not be next year's return, but in the long run, always all the rate cycles, equity cycles are taken care of, and a certain kind of return is given in a dynamic kind of a asset allocation strategy.
So we have one query from Jaspreet Kaur. So she has invested in pension funds of non-government entities. Can she still invest in NPS? And also, is there any assured return?
The second part first, because it is easy to answer, there is absolutely no assured return. Because as it is market linked, nobody can predict the market and we cannot assure a certain kind of return. What we can only show is that your 10, 12 years track record, how it has performed over a time. But I can only tell you that if you remain here for a long period of time, definitely, as I said, all the market volatilities over a period of time are taken care of and you can expect a decent competitive return. That is one. And the first part of the question was, I believe, about she is invested in some other non-government entity and all that. Yes, that does not deter you from having NPS account. Only under NPS, you can have only one single unique brand. You cannot have two NPS schemes running. One on your own, one from your employer, nothing like that will be allowed. But if you have some other scheme in some other place, you can happily open another NPS account, no issue.
Okay, the next question is from Mr. Deep. So this question is for Madam Barrows. So Mr. Deep is inquiring whether contractual employees can join NPS.
I think Mr. Bandyopadhyay would be well equipped to answer, but I think yes, they can join NPS because NPS is based on employee, it's individual. So and as an individual can join, whether as an employee, whether they can join or not, I think Mr. Bandyopadhyay can speak about it.
Employee only, they can join mostly for contractual employees. Employer will not bear anything.
Yeah.
But if they still want to join, I believe our rules will not deter them from joining. I think Mono also can add to that. Contractual employees, if suppose the employer also wants to contribute, maybe not equivalent amount, some unequal amount also. There is nothing in our act or the rules to deter them. No.
Okay, so the last question is from Mr. Sasank R. Manohar. So his question is, looking at current changes in CSRF and exit policies, why those are getting more and more complex day by day, his observation basically. And the next question, the question is, what is the necessity of third CRA? Won't it create confusion in minds of subscribers and will create more movement across CRAs?
Yes, I believe I have read somewhere, if I am not mistaken, that competition brings out the best in any kind of a system. So we are trying to give it some kind of a competition because we have seen what kind of things happen due to big monopolies. Today, I come from an institution which used to be a monopoly for maybe more than 5 decades. But the moment the competition came, today at one point there was one life insurance company, today there are 25 life insurance companies. So it is bringing out the best, not only in the insurance sector for the new players, but in life insurance corporation also, the oldest of the insurance companies in India. So competition always will be doing the best. And as a customer, I believe you will have a choice. And different CRAs, they are giving different revenue structures. So if you go to some CRA A or CRA B, you will get a better return. You can always do that. Servicing levels definitely will vary. So these are the things that we are looking into while going for the third CRA.
Yeah, Mr. Bandyopadhyay, one question from my side. A lot of unclaimed provident fund is lying with the government because of the contractual labor. They are not much aware of and how to take the money back. And many times they work for 10 days or 20 days, 30 days, and they run away. They are not aware of it. So is there any possibility at one point, and it is statutory as well, is there any possibility that PF may be substituted by NPS in future after 1 year, 2 year, or some scheme like that. Because contractual labor has a very work on minimum wages mostly, and they don't have much money to get deducted for putting money into the NPS system. So for them, either they can go for PF or they can go for NPS.
So we'll definitely encourage that kind of a change if it comes. Because initially also when the labor code was being drafted, initially there was a thought that the choice will be given even to the employers whether they will choose PF or NPS, but ultimately that was withdrawn. So if that kind of choice comes, we'll definitely encourage that and we'll accept that. Yes, definitely.
Yeah, thank you very much. So can we sum up, Devjyoti?
And a small change, because it is in connection with what you said. Here also what happens, people who are leaving early, maybe those who joined late or maybe got a confirmation at a late stage and they started contributing at a late stage, but they are reaching their 60 within 10 years of joining and all that. So they have a small corpus. Sometimes giving a 40% of the corpus converted into annuity, the annuity becomes a small amount. Sometimes it is meaningless also. So what we have changed, and Mr. Fukan also has shown that into the presentation, but of course we have not told that it is a recent change, is that up to 5 lakh at the point of retirement, if anybody has a small corpus of up to 5 lakh, they have a choice that either they can take annuity or they can take the entire corpus back.
Okay, thank you very much for informing this. Thanks a lot.
Because that 5 lakh rupees.
Okay, good. So, hello, Dev, you think?
Yeah, you can conclude, Mr. Gupta.
Thank you very much. So to sum up, I can say life expectancy is very high now, and we all are going to live longer. We need to save money for the future. What future saving is always on back seat. And for saving, rightly pointed out by distinguished guests, NPS is an excellent option for a substantial corpus creation for one's retirement phase. NPS offers various benefits such as flexibility, dual benefit of low cost, and power of compounding, tax benefits, safety, regulated and monitored, etc. NPS is also very simple to open and operate, as the subscriber can open an account with any one point of presence through eNPS and get a permanent retirement account number. I would like to convey my sincere thanks to Mr. Supratim Bandyopadhyay, Chairman PFRDA, for sparing his valuable time, and also thank all the other distinguished guests and participants who joined us today. Thank you very much. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Mr. Gupta. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks. Bye-bye.